Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Today's guest was born with an endurance mindset. Since a young age, participated in many types of sports and athletic activities. During the Marine Corps marathon, she felt something was wrong and later found out that she had brain cancer that changed her life forever. Special event coordinator at the U.S. government, BethAnn Telford. Please welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit about my journey and hopefully be able to spark some enthusiasm in some other people out there.
Wonderful. Well, let's jump right in. My favorite question to ask my guest, BethAnn, is tell me about how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
Well, I've always been an endurance athlete, Greg, and through high school and afterwards, I played field hockey, soccer, always a group endurance activity. But when I got hit with brain cancer several years ago, I thought that, oh, this is it. I'm going to sit down and call it quits for myself and not go forward. I thought, no, there's other ways to tackle this cancer. And it was only because of my neurosurgeon that I was able to pick up uh, a bike and pick up my running shoes and start going forward and doing very intense endurance competitions, mostly solo, except I never felt like I was solo on these journeys, and we can talk about that going forward. But, when you do an Ironman, it is with a big group of people, but my support system and the reason why I wanted to do it was not about BethAnn Telford. It was about my journey with cancer, but all those that supported me and all those that I fought for.
Very well said. And we will dive into that for sure, because it is a team effort when we're doing these endurance races. BethAnn, let's talk about, I mentioned in the intro, the Marine Corps marathon, something just didn't feel right. Walk us through that day. Tell us what went on.
Yeah, I was and had been training and had done several Marine Corps marathons, and it happened to be the hottest Marine Corps marathon on record to date and still is. In that year, Haynes Point was towards the end of the Marine Corps. Now they've stuck it in between. I think it's mile 13 now. It was mile 18, 19. And I thought I had heat stroke. I was dehydrated. That's what I thought. But I remember exactly where I was. And I looked up, felt a huge pop in my head. And my gait, which is how you run, was going back and forth almost like I was drunk. And I was bumping into people. And I thought, well, if I could just make it to the next aid station, I could get some Gatorade, water, and power up. And I got there and nothing helped me. But I ended up finishing that marathon, not in a good time, but finishing it. So the next day, Marine Corps Marathon always falls on the last Sunday of October. And the next day was a Monday, of course, and I went to work, and I was working in an agency where, you had historical pieces of furniture that had been in place for many years. And I was running into it. I was forgetting about meetings, important telephone messages, things that were of critical importance to my job, which I had done and successfully done previously. Got on the metro, and instead of going to Northern Virginia, I ended up in the other side of Maryland. Had no idea. Everything was just a big swampy mess up in my brain. So thankfully, the gentleman that I worked for, who was the public printer of the United States at that time, him and his wife more or less said, look, you need to go get checked out. Something's going on. And I went to GW Hospital, had an MRI, and several days later, and you're talking, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, the doctor called me himself and said, you need to come in. And I said to the doctor, I can't come in. I got this going on, heavy workload. Finally got him to tell me what was going on. And he said, well, we detected a mass in your MRI. And I was like, mass? What do you mean mass? He goes, a brain tumor. And again, going back 15, 16, 17 years ago, you didn't know or you didn't hear about these things. And I was like, what is that? Brain tumor. And he's like, well, we need to talk. So you need to come in. So I went in and I talked to my boss and he's like, get out of here. And from that day forward, his wife picked up and really took control of my medical situation. We went and visited several facilities to see who would operate because the tumor is located by the optic nerve. So several didn't want to even get to that in the major blood vessel to the brain, really was their concern. Ended up, after seeing several physicians and neurosurgeons throughout the United States, ended up at Johns Hopkins. And very happy to say Dr. Henry Brem was the man that operated on me, and to this day, is my surgeon and good friend along with his team. And I've had several brain surgeries since then. But that's what led it. Running really brought me to my knees. And after that, I have not missed a Marine Corps marathon, except for the 1 year that it was, delayed for COVID. Since then, and have run them. And that is my race. It is a hometown race. It's a great race, even if you're thinking of a marathon to do. It is a tough one to qualify on, but just great as far as spectators and the military and our great service members, it being a part of that.
Absolutely. It is one of my favorite. I've run Marine Corps once. My wife is currently training for it for this year. So
Okay.
we'll see you out there. And
Yeah.
when we were living in the city, we were down on Capitol Hill, and every year we'd walk out and just high-fiving. It's a fantastic race.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I'm curious, was there any scientific relationship between the run that day and the discovery? Like, did something scientifically change because of the endurance event that you were in that kind of brought the cancer to light?
I am not aware of that, no, but I would say that the heat probably, and I was one of those runners that I could go a whole marathon without eating or doing what they call a goose shot or anything like that. I hardly did any water. But, that's old school training, but I since have changed my method to be able to finish stronger and healthier. But there could have been, because it was so hot and I was on the verge. I mean, they did give me IVs and everything, and I do have a problem with that. So yeah, I would say, but I've never looked into it 100%.
Certainly. So then let's talk about getting back into sport. Obviously you went through your initial surgeries. You're in recovery. When did you start putting the shoes back on, getting on the bike, and talk to us about the sort of the endurance mindset that it takes to do that?
Well, that's a great segue into this. So I had the surgery. We didn't know what to expect until they actually did the cut from ear to ear. Usually, sometimes you can go up through the nose, but I had to have a full craniotomy. And we didn't know what to expect, obviously. Got in there. He was able to remove a good portion of it, but around the major blood vessel to the brain. So I had to learn to walk again, talk in complete sentences. I still to this day stutter and I have memory loss. Um, I was seizuring a lot. So there was a lot of complications from the surgery itself when you open the brain up. So a few months after my first surgery, April the 12th in 2005, I was back home in Pennsylvania with my parents. I had stayed there after I came out of the hospital to rehab. And there was a 5K in my hometown of Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. And I wanted the family to walk that with me. So I thought, I'll walk this, So we all started out walking and my mom is like, pointing the finger and saying, don't even think about running. Don't think about running. So, it really wasn't in my mindset as we took off for the 5K. So I'm there. I have two older sisters with their families and my mom and my dad. And we start walking this 5K, and I'm bandana, no hair. I did have my running shoes on and running gear. So we got about halfway through the 5K and I heard my father. Now, I wasn't paying attention, but my father went the back way through the 5K so that he would meet up with us. So my father was always my biggest supporter, my hero, my best friend. And all of a sudden I heard my father yelling like he did when I was in high school and college, pick it up, go after him, go get him. I heard my father say, Beth, pick it up, run. Those were my first steps back into running and doing an Ironman, all because of my father and at that 5K. So I was running several months after my full brain surgery only because of my father knowing what I needed to hear. And that brought it all back to me, all back. Now, of course, my mothers and sisters were yelling at me to, walk. I mean, again, my gait was like this, but I ran, not fast at all. And I finished that 5K running only because of my father.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the support crew that we have as endurance athletes as we tackle marathons, because it is a solo event, right? You're at the
Yeah.
starting line by yourself and you're the one putting the shoes on and you're the one suffering for 26.2 miles. But reality is there's a team behind you. Talk to us about your team. You touched on your family a little bit. Who else do you have in your circle?
So my family, of course, is my biggest supporter, especially my mother and father. But I have a trainer who is my best friend, John. And John trains me. He's a heck of a runner. Swimming and biking, he's extraordinary. And he really read my body, let's say, as a trainer and was able to train me. Now, I've had other trainers train me to go around the world and things like that on all aspects of nutrition and that. But John has been my biggest trainer. But on top of that, he commingled with my family and my better half, Bob, on the sidelines. We're my biggest rooters. Or the night before when you're all panicked and like, I don't know if I can do this, or, I hope the race is canceled or it's raining and I can get out of this. They're the ones that say, look, you've come this far, you've done chemo, you've done this, you've done that. You can do this. I remember too, when I did the Ironman World Championships in Kona, I had gone out for a swim and I always heard that in salt water, you would swim better because you float. Well, I go out there to do the swim portion, and I'm out there with a dear friend who came along to celebrate her birthday and to celebrate me, who was a supporter because her sister had a brain tumor as well. And that's how we um, met. She took me on this swim, and we're out in Kona in the middle of the water, and I am just in tears. This is the day before the race. I'm like, I can't do this. I am done. I'm not doing this. I have nothing to prove because I couldn't swim. I was having such a hard time, such a hard time. Well, she just laid into me, and that's all I needed was that little kick in the butt from someone that I would have never thought of being out in the middle of the water in Hawaii telling me. So it comes from all aspects, from a trainer, from family to friends, to even that person that has been a mile from the finish line saying to me, or me giving back to another person saying, look, you got this. I'll run in with you. Don't worry, you got this. Running with someone, maybe they're not as fast as you, but it's their accomplishments that give you that great feeling that, oh my God, I helped someone do this. So I've had several of those people that have helped me because they wanted to see me succeed, no matter if it was going to throw their time off. And I'm sure you've had that or you've done it for someone. But it's amazing when you see people, just a mile or two back from completing a marathon, Ironman or whatever, and they're really struggling. And you've seen it where people have carried people across the finish line. The people carrying or talking to those people are the ones that get the better feeling out of completing that than the person themselves,
That's exactly right. Absolutely. And there's so many stories that are just coming to mind. BethAnn, I'm curious, those lessons that you've learned from, walking up to something difficult, telling yourself you couldn't do it or you shouldn't do it, or hoping that it's going to rain, or maybe the swim's canceled or something, and then pushing either yourself or being pushed through the accomplishment, that experience, how else does that apply to your life? How have you taken those lessons in other aspects of your life?
Well, I think it has worked well with me when, with work. Sometimes, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. And you're like, wow, this is a team effort, especially in communications, which I do in events. And I see that putting on, let's just say, my biggest event is Veterans Day. I love that. I love the veterans. And giving back. I never served our country. If I had to do it all over again, I would have done that. Been in the Marines. But giving back to our service members has been huge. And I try every year to do something for veterans that help me give back to our country. I help out down at the Vietnam Wall in my everyday life. I do a lot at Arlington National Cemetery. Also with my friends that want to get started in something, doing a 5K or something, Girls on the Run. I think it has impacted me and also given me the ability with my cancer to see and advocate. And this is my biggest accomplishment for children, pediatric kids, to fight for them. And the reason why I did this, and this is going back to when I wanted to really give up, and Dr. Brem walked me through the pediatric ward and said, a lot of these kids aren't going to get out of here. And I didn't understand what he meant. He said, they're not going home. And after questioning more, I knew what it was. Is these kids had cancer, and the majority of them weren't going home with their parents. Their next step was their next journey to the afterlife, whatever that is for that child. And I I was like, whoa, this is not cool. Here I am, an adult, and these kids have never done, never driven, never had their first date, never got a speeding ticket, never, were fired from a job or had to decide which job to take or stay in the community. So I started advocating for these kids, mostly children with brain cancer, but then doing so on the Hill and through the Brain Tumor Society and Accelerate Brain Cancer Cure, found out that children were getting so much less than an adult with brain cancer. Now, today, I don't know the statistics as I did well before COVID, but it was like adults were getting 40% of government funds and a child was getting like 7%. Now you're talking, that's historically terrible, especially when the kids are our future. So that's when I really, really did pull up my bootstraps and get started in advocating for children. And a lot of people were like, what about you? And it's like, gosh, I've lived. When I was diagnosed, I was 35. These kids are, 5, 10, 15. And I grew these relationships with these children now that are starting college. I just received in the mail when I got home yesterday a save the date for one of the kids that had brain cancer is now getting married. And, these kids have become my family, my family's family. They all know them. My parents just wrapped their arms around them. In fact, my father was reading the local paper and found my bestest, I call her, through a newspaper article in our hometown paper that her school had brought in hats to cover her head from the loss of hair.
Right.
And my father said, Beth, you've got to meet her when you're home. Well, I did. And it was immediately, we fell in love with each other. I helped her family. And I helped her. And next year she goes off to college. And, to me, that has been, wow, I've helped her fight. And in turn, she has helped me be a better person as an adult to fight for her. And this child is, out of all of them, I love each one, but she's been special because of her faith journey. And she helps me in that. And she just has this great outlook on life with everything she's been through, the multiple brain surgeries and every 3 months an MRI and the unknown and the weight gain, the weight loss, the hair loss, so it's just amazing how these kids have sparked me to be a better person and to, pick up the bike and pick up my shoes and try to raise money to fight for them.
It's so well said. It's one of the reasons I race, and my older brother's mentally handicapped and
Mhm.
can't do many of the luxuries that I can. Back to your
Yeah.
point about driving or writing a letter or going out on a date.
Yeah.
And it's that gratitude that gets me to the starting line. It's that gratitude that gets me out of bed every morning. That's like, you know what? I've got all these tools. I'm so fortunate. How can I go out there and be better? And what you're doing is amazing. Tell the audience a little bit more about how they can advocate for these same children. Because again, the awareness isn't out there as much as it should be. If there's an audience member listening who wants to participate or support or to get involved, what's an avenue for them to go down?
Well, I say that if it's in your heart and you fully feel that you should pick a cause, be it alcoholism, ALS, the Olympics, the Special Olympics, or like myself, the brain tumor community, the best way to go is through the National Brain Tumor Society. And I'll use them as a example. They tend to have these big nonprofits an area on their website for events, and you are able to use your athletic ability to run a marathon, do an Ironman, and they support you as long as you raise so much money. But for myself, doing it, I wasn't really, yes, I did want to raise the money because I wanted to raise awareness, but it was everyone that I took along that journey because it was in my heart. Um, and, a couple times I've raced for Alzheimer's to help my father, or dementia, or Lewy bodies. They have all these. So whatever's in your heart, maybe it's not brain tumors. But pediatric brain tumors is my platform. And that's, where I got started was the National Brain Tumor Society, and then Accelerate Brain Cancer Cure. But they have since now gone to another platform. So it's all the National Brain Tumor Society. But again, I can't stress, if it's in your heart, you have a friend that's suffering from something quietly, and you want to do something, there is just so many outlets out there to do it in a good way. And the ability to do that, I think in the long run, it makes you feel good about yourself that you're doing giving back quietly, or in a big platform like myself, where I did a huge shout out for the Ironman World Championships and then going around the world.
That's such a great point. Especially as we can, we're doing our training, we're getting through our work day, having that second thought of, what all this effort that I'm doing, if I just communicated it a little bit and put it towards a purpose, like the Challenge Athletes Foundation, the brain cancer, like you name it, it gives you a different feeling because I've raised money for CAF, but it gives you a different feeling at the starting line, right? It's not that you're just doing this for yourself. You're doing this because you're fundraising and you're contributing back to the community. But then I'm also curious about, what do you do outside of training and marathons? And tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I come from Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. I love it there. I love the country. I still have a home there. My family's back there. I love doing things. I love going on vacations, but I love coming back and just being quiet too. In my downtime, I do I'll it's a gamut of things. I help with the church with weddings. I do that to give back. I love thrifting, believe it or not. It's something I enjoy. But mostly, I think it is family, and I do have a dog. I've always had a dog, and that is my child, and I just love, being outdoors is my big thing. Like, I love walking the dog, and um that's a, good question, because every day I work out. I mean, I worked out this morning, and I've changed up my workouts to accommodate me getting older. And I love friends, and always looking forward to the weekend and Saturday mornings when I work out with some young girls here in the city, and they try to ruin me on a run in the Lincoln Stairs. But generally it's that. I did, I lost my father, so I have been struggling with that. Grief is serious. And although I've been around a lot of grief with losing these people and dear friends and a family member to brain tumors, my cousin died. So it is related, family gender. I do know that. And I never had the grief of losing a loved one so very, very close to me, and someone that was my hero that kept me going. And I think the loss of my father was worse than me finding out I had cancer or battling it, because I lost my biggest advocate and biggest hero, and I'll never have that again. And I can't stress how important it is one to have someone to look up to. Not always like someone like Lance Armstrong or, Usain Bolt, but I was lucky to have a father that I look up to. And he was just a blue collar working man, traveling salesman, but he was always there. He never missed one of my high school games, always yelling at me as far as good yelling. Like, he always wanted me to fight the girls on the field hockey field. And he always, you know, he, he just was someone that I knew without saying that he loved me. He wasn't a man of many words. I just knew he did. And I remember walking the morning of the Ironman World Championships, and it's dark. And he was the last one to put me in the chute. And I said, Dad, are you proud of me? And he said, Beth, who's more proud of you is your grandfather, his father, who was very tough on me. And he says, you know what? I've always been proud of you, and I'm never going to be, never stop being proud of you. And that's all I needed. And I saw him, and he never moved from the area in Hawaii that he was in, watching me and waiting for me. And he said to me, and they had him at the finish line, he said, did you stop and do your makeup before you came across the finish line? He says, you look so good. He goes, I can't believe you've been out there for, 12, 15 hours. So the loss of him, of course, when you have someone that you look up to and admire so much, grief is hard. And if you're still struggling like myself, or you have lost someone to a disease, try to, channel that into maybe a workout or giving back to the community, feeding the hungry, or, helping the sick. Try to funnel that back, because in the long run, it makes you feel better. And I know what I'm doing now. My dad is still proud of me. Do I wish I could hear him? Yeah. But that's not going to happen again.
I've got a vision of him in my brain right now for some reason, and I have no idea what he looks like, but what a remarkable human being and a powerful story. And you're absolutely right about these negative feelings and grief and, just those, we need to be channeling those either into our workouts, into the community, and not letting it just fester inside our bodies. Beth, audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way for an audience member to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's by my email, which is team, TEAM, B as in boy, T as in Telford, at verizon.net. That's the best way. I do have a website, www.teambt. That is another way, but the best way is email, and I'd love to help out in any way I can. Again, the joy of giving back to me is more rewarding than receiving. I'm not a receiver, I'm a giver. So that is my way of showing that I do love things, and I love doing things for others, and that's the best way I can do it.
Fantastic. And we'll put those links in our show notes. Beth, I've loved this conversation. I could go on for hours and hours about things that we're grateful for, dealing with grief, that feeling of just not wanting to do it. Like you just want to stop. And then that ultimate push, wherever it comes from, it could be internal, it could be your spouse, it could be your kids. It's, we all have those little triggers. The work that you're doing is fantastic. And thank you for your contribution to the community. To our audience members, please share this show when you hear it with your friends, with your family, into your community. Let's spread this message. Subscribe to the show. Please like it if you liked it. Beth, it's been wonderful having you again. Your message and your inspiration, you filled my morning with gratitude, and I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I hope that I can spark some energy in some other people too, especially the way our country is right now. We all need that extra spark.
Absolutely. And I look for, hopefully, I'll see you in a few weeks while you're running by me at Marine Corps.
No, I'm not going to run by you. If anything, if I see you, I'm going to run beside you and help you.
Awesome. Thanks again.
You're welcome, Greg.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits